Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a Premier League opener that was just full of contradictions. Arsenal went to Old Trafford and came away with a huge 1-0 win. But trust me, that scoreline doesn't even begin to tell the whole story. This was a match that was really defined by a controversial goal, a super quiet debut for a star striker, and two teams that left the field feeling completely differently about how they played.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First up, we'll unpack this whole idea of winning ugly and what that actually means for Arsenal's season. Then we're going to take a look at a really frustrating first game for a big new signing. After that, we will dissect the single decisive moment that settled the whole thing. Then we'll explore why on earth Manchester United fans found so much promise in a defeat. And finally, we'll get to the big question, what does this one result tell us about where these two massive rivals are heading?
So, first things first. The central paradox of the whole game. Arsenal gets 3 massive points away from home. I mean, that's a perfect start to the season, right? But the performance? Whoa. It was messy, it was sloppy, and it left pretty much everyone, including their own manager, admitting they have to be way, way better.
And you know, this one quote from Roy Keane just absolutely nails it. It perfectly sums up the feeling around Arsenal's victory. Nobody's saying this was classic, beautiful Arsenal. Not at all. But teams that win championships, they find a way. They have to grind it out, they hang on for dear life, and they find a way to get the points, even when they're having an off day.
And that's exactly what the manager said. Mikel Arteta, he didn't try to sugarcoat it or pretend they played well. He was honest about the mistakes. But his focus wasn't on the shoddy performance, it was on how his players reacted. He praised their fight, their character, and that defensive grit that, in the end, was what got them over the line.
Okay. Let's switch gears and talk about one of the biggest stories coming into the match, the debut of Arsenal's brand new, big money striker Victor Gyökeres. There was so much hype, so much excitement, but his first taste of the Premier League, yeah, it was a frustrating one, and here's why.
If you want to know the story of his entire day, it all comes down to one single, lonely number, 3. That's it. That's how many times he touched the ball inside the other team's penalty box. To give you some perspective, a Manchester United substitute who came on late in the game managed to have 4. For your main striker, that is almost total isolation.
So, why was he such a ghost out there? Well, the analysis points to a few key things. For one, he missed a big chunk of preseason, so his sharpness just wasn't there. He's also still trying to figure out the runs and the style of his new teammates. The service from midfield just wasn't getting to him, and you could literally see his frustration growing as the clock ticked on. It's a tough start for sure, but a good reminder that even the best players need a little time to settle in.
All right, now for the moment. The one play that the entire match hinged on. A single goal from a corner kick, but oh, it was anything but simple. This one moment sparked a massive debate about physicality, goalkeeping, and what should or shouldn't be a foul.
So, how did this goal even happen? Let's walk through it. It all starts out looking like any other corner kick, totally standard. The ManUnited keeper, Altay Bayındır, is getting himself set, he's looking around, and he sees his teammate Mason Mount is supposed to be marking Arsenal's big imposing defender, William Saliba.
But then, in the split second it takes for the ball to be kicked, the entire picture changes. Saliba, who analysts called Arsenal's strongest player, just completely takes Mount out of the play. He uses his body to create a direct, physical one-on-one battle with the goalkeeper himself, and you can see Bayındır just wasn't ready for it.
And this is where it all goes wrong for the keeper. Bayındır is now totally off balance. He's basically in a wrestling match with Saliba, and he can't get any forward momentum to go and attack the ball. The result is just this weak, reactive flap with his left hand instead of a strong two-fisted punch. The ball drops, and Arsenal tap it in for the easiest goal they'll score all season.
And that whole incident just put a massive spotlight on the difference between the two goalkeepers. While Bayındır got caught up in that physical battle, Arsenal's keeper, David Raya, put on a masterclass in how to command your penalty area. He was proactive, he was aggressive, he made 7 really important saves, and he kept coming out to punch crosses with real authority. He was exactly the calming presence his team needed.
Okay, so you'd think after losing at home and the frustration with that goal, the mood around Manchester United would be terrible, right? Well, not exactly. The post-match analysis was actually surprisingly positive for them. This didn't look like the same disjointed team from last season.
In defeat, they showed some real signs of progress and gave their fans a genuine reason to be optimistic.
And if you're wondering why there was so much optimism, this chart tells you everything you need to know. Just look at the shot count. Manchester United had 22 shots on goal. That is exactly double what Arsenal managed. They weren't just sitting back and hoping for the best. They really took the game to their opponents and controlled long spells of it.
And all the pundits seem to agree this was a different Manchester United. They looked way more confident, more dynamic. Their new players looked sharp. And maybe most importantly, they weren't just a one-man band relying on Bruno Fernandes to create every single chance. The attack was much more varied and unpredictable.
This quote from Owen Hargreaves really captures that feeling. He argued that, forget the score, United were clearly the better team, and that this one performance was better than anything he saw from them all of last season. When you hear an impartial analyst say something that strong about the losing team, you know they must be doing something right. So what's the big takeaway here? What does it all mean after one game? Well, the result tells one story, an Arsenal win. But the performances hint that two clubs heading down very different but equally interesting paths this season.
And this table really sums it all up. For Arsenal, the takeaway is simple: 3 points in the bag. They won with grit, not grace, and that's a trait that any team with title hopes has to have. But the big question for them is, can they keep winning if they don't start playing better? Then you look at Manchester United. The takeaway is a promising performance, full of new energy. But their question is just as big. Can they figure out how to turn these good performances into actual wins?
And that leaves us with this really fascinating question that gets right to the heart of football philosophy. After the very first game of a long, brutal season, what's actually more valuable? Is it the 3 points you've already got, no matter how you got them? Or is it the beautiful performance that promises a much brighter future, even if it left you with nothing to show for it on the day?